Hi, Dave.
Hi, Eric.
Hey, Dave. Do we curse on this podcast?
Yes, Eric. Yes, we do.
Are you ready, kids? Get your parents' permission, check your mailbox, and grab your shopping cart. It's time for the Adventures in Collecting podcast.
I'm Eric.
And I'm Dave. Welcome to Adventures in Collecting, where we talk toy news, culture, and hauls,
along with our journeys as collectors. Our guest today is the founder and CEO of the Nacelle Company, a notable toy historian, Grammy Award winner, and the man behind shows like The Toys That Made Us and The Movies That Made Us, and the upcoming Toy Store Near You on Netflix. Welcome to Adventures in Collecting, Brian Volk-Weiss.
Thank you for having me. And not to correct you immediately, but I always like to be anal about this stuff. It will not be on Netflix.
It won't? Okay.
Yeah, it'll be on Amazon Prime, YouTube, and a lot of other places. And listen, it could be on Netflix a long time from now, but it will not be premiering on Netflix. That's for sure.
Gotcha. So that May 29th premiere date will be on Amazon.
It'll be on Amazon Prime and YouTube. And then basically what we're doing, and this is, everything with COVID and whatnot is unusual. So we're just kind of going with the flow of embracing unusual. We, rather than wait to have 10 episodes done, which, that could be 3 or 4 months. We're basically, and if anyone has done this before, I'm not aware of it, but I'm not saying we're the first, because I hate when people say that and you're like, you're not the first. But we're just going to pop them out as they're done. So we just locked the second episode today. We should be locking the third and fourth, and we're going to put them out on Amazon Prime and YouTube immediately, and then basically put them everywhere else that our distribution network is, and that'll be Roku, probably Tubi, Pluto, places like that. So, within reason, within about 90 days of every premiere, it should be, in theory, everywhere else that you would go to watch anything. So from Samsung TV to you name it.
Very cool. Well, before we dive into the nitty-gritty of the shows and everything, we always like to ask our guests what they're currently collecting and what toy line has you excited at the moment.
Well, my newest thing, and this is like less than a week old, is Micro Machines. And that is because a new book came out. I think it's called Micro but Mighty, or Mighty but Micro. And the publishers sent me a copy of the book. People send us stuff all the time, and if I get excited about it, I'll post about it. I really was into Micro Machines when I was a kid, but I just kind of fell out of it, and I was never really into it. Like right now, this very second, I don't have a single Micro Machine in my collection. So, but I can feel the attraction building inside me, and I guarantee you, within a month or two, I'm going to have a pretty nice. I'll probably have at least 3 to 5, and within a year or two, probably a couple dozen, because that's how my collecting is. I go from 0 to 100 very quickly. So that's my newest thing. And then I'm always collecting Star Wars. I'm always collecting G.I. Joe, always collecting Transformers, always collecting Batman, always collecting RoboCop. I'll tell you something that always surprises toy people. I was never, ever, ever into He-Man until we made the He-Man episode of Toys That Made Us. And now, there's specific He-Mans I'm into. I'm always, pretty cautious with price. So, if I see a figure using He-Man, sometimes I'm cautious. My wife would tell you I'm not cautious at all. But yeah, and then I'm always into Star Trek. I always forget about Star Trek, but Star Trek might be my biggest collection, weirdly enough. And I'm into Legos as well. But I'm not into vintage Legos at all. So whenever a new set comes out, like I just built the '89 Batmobile. I just built Mega Bloks' Constitution class Enterprise. So yeah, that's. Did that answer your question, or was that too much or too little?
No, that was perfect. Yeah, I just did the '89 Batmobile too. How wild was that thing?
It was wonderful,
Yeah,
absolutely wonderful.
it was so cool.
Well, with your micro machines, there's quite a crossover with micro machines and Star Wars. If you start getting into some of the stuff from the '90s, that those were the only micro machines I had were the Star Wars micro machine sets, and they are a blast. Like they're great to display too because a lot of them the sets fold up and look like miniature busts of characters. Like once you start looking into that stuff, I think you're going to open up Pandora's
Well,
box.
you know what? I accidentally lied to you because I forgot about Star Wars and Star Trek Micro Machines. Now that you reminded me, I do have Micro Machines in my collection. In fact, not only do I have them in my collection, they're some of the oldest parts of my collection. Yes, so I will reword what I said. If you remove Star Wars and Star Trek, and I think I have a couple Babylon 5s, then I have no Micro Machines. I was kind of referring just to like cars, but you're absolutely right. I did go down that wormhole a long time ago.
So, among the many stand-up comedians you've worked with over the years, do you talk toys with any of them?
Very few. Moshe Kesher, yes. Moshe Kesher is a big Star Trek guy. Jeff Dunham, he's a huge geek. I've never been around Jeff Dunham and not talked about Batman.
I saw that you had done some work with Patton Oswalt. I figured that would be a
Yeah,
big
yeah.
toy conversation right there.
You're absolutely right. When there used to be this thing that existed called Toys R Us, the Toys R Us near my office, about 3 to 4 times a year, I would bump into Patton there, and we would always catch up on toys. And usually, when I bump into him, and by the way, another one I forgot about, but you're absolutely right, is Brian Posehn. We always talk about Star Wars.
Yeah, because I just feel like it's one of those things where there is so much crossover with those guys because they're like especially with a comedian, right? Because your life kind of ends up becoming your material, and I can think vividly of a couple of Patton's bits that involve his toys. So I was when I was looking up your history and when Dave and I were looking up your history and we saw all of the work that you had done with stand-up comedy, we were like, oh man, I bet there are some good toy stories there.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's it's funny. I just went to IMDb to look at my credits to see who I'm forgetting about. Oh, I mean, obviously Kevin Smith. Oh my God. Kevin Smith's one of these people. Like, when we're together, it's like to say we go down a wormhole would be a understatement. And I will say this doesn't really count, but I'll tell it to you because it's funny. Bob Saget, I hope he doesn't mind me saying this. He's not a Star Wars fan at all, but he has like a random Yoda in his office, and he always, not always, but frequently when we're talking or texting, he'll send me a picture of his Yoda and make a joke about it. That definitely counts. That counts. By the way, a lot of the comedians make fun of me for being a geek. In fact, almost anytime we work with Moshe, I give him something Star Trek related.
So you've become part of the material yourself.
I actually am in a few jokes. One of Ali Wong's jokes in her second special is about me, but it is not about my toy collecting.
You recently posted 2 pictures on your Instagram of 2 very strange and unique one-off figures. And something that we have never seen before or heard of, but the Judge Dredd prototype and the Luke Skywalker prototype. How did you come across those?
Well, I'm scared to answer the question because then if you don't know how or where I got them, that means you're blissfully unaware of the prototyping community, which means your wallets are fatter than they will after I tell you this. But Yeah, man. It's really funny. About 4 years ago, 5 years ago, a guy named Brian Stillman had made a movie about Star Wars toys called Plastic Galaxy. And I had read an article about it in USA Today. I reached out to him. We got lunch a couple months later. And Brian, by the way, would be the first person I called after Toys That Made Us got greenlit. And he and I like text literally every single day, like 7 days a week for years. Um, anyway, he got me into my first private Facebook. Like, if you search for this, you won't find it. So maybe you're safe. But there are these like private Facebook groups for prototypes. And he got me into one, and then I got into another, and I got into another. And all these groups is what you saw on those posts. It's they're just unbelievable pieces of history of either the beginnings of toy lines, or as it relates to the Judge Dredd and that Luke Skywalker, parts of history that didn't happen. That's Luke Skywalker, was Playmates' attempt to get into the Star Wars business when Lucasfilm opened it up to everybody after Hasbro/Kenner lost the exclusivity. So to me, first of all, I'm a big Judge Dredd fan. Second of all, I love that, again, the history of what didn't happen. Had the movie been a success, that figure would have come out and been in stores. By the movie bombing, a movie I love, by the way, this is the Stallone version, it never happened. And the same thing is, with Playmates losing the bake-off to Hasbro, that became a piece of history and never made it to store shelves.
It's amazing this stuff survives too. That's the thing that I find the craziest about whenever you see prototypes of anything.
Well, it's amazing it survived, and I agree with you. But what's even more amazing to me, there's new stuff being discovered all the time. A couple weeks ago, another one of my big deep dive collections is Dune, David Lynch's Dune. And there, LJN did a beautiful line that basically bankrupted the company, I might add. But LJN did a beautiful line of Dune figures. And they had the movie succeeded, there would have been a second and third and fourth series. And for the longest time, Queen Catherine, there was only two known heads of hers that were made, the wax sculpture heads. And they just like a couple weeks ago found like another one. So, for like 30 years, there was only known to be two. Now there's three.
Yeah, it's crazy to think about stuff like that, because it like maybe that one extra figure that came out, or that extra wave, would have done something to actually, help the franchise, or like, that Judge Dredd movie. There's so much toyetic in that film, regardless of what you think of it. Personally, I also enjoy it. Dave, I don't know if I'm speaking for you as well on that one.
I like both. I like the new one and the original.
I have to imagine that, like, if some of those monster looking toys came out, like the cannibals that lived in the desert, like those characters would have made such good toys. Like, would it have given the film like additional legs? Would it have given it, kind of a little bit more of a cult following that it already had?
I honestly don't think so. And again, I say this as a fan of both movies. As somebody that greenlights things speculatively, not knowing if they're going to succeed or not, I have a real interest in, past, present, and future greenlights that companies make. And I would argue, Judge, you should not be investing $50 to $80 million in 1996 on a movie that's only going to really appeal to dudes. And that's for Judge Dredd. Dune, I mean, and I say this about the new one. Listen, I'll be there opening night for the new one, but to spend money like that on a movie that is probably not going to be enjoyed by, there's 4 quadrants. There's young men, there's young women, there's old men, there's old women. So to spend money like that on a 1 or 2 quadrant film, I think is bonkers, and no amount of toys, especially for Dune. I don't know how familiar you are with that, David Lynch's.
Yes, yes.
Insane. And I love it. I mean, I've seen it dozens and dozens of times. I have one of my favorite prototypes is from Dune. I have so much consumer products from Dune. I have an entire shelf dedicated to Dune. But you can't. Star Wars worked because it appealed to all 4 quadrants. Certainly 3 quadrants, but I arguably 4. I don't think the toys would have saved either movie.
Well, yeah, maybe I'm being a little hyperbolic regarding it saving the movie, but it's just to me it's interesting the amount of thought and artistry that goes into those things, and the fact that they stay buried for as long as they do. Like Zombie Sailor Toys on Instagram recently posted a picture of a Last Action Hero Arnold figure that was supposed to come out that he managed to find on card. Like,
with the black shirt.
Yeah.
I
Wild.
Those. I love that movie. I'm looking. I'm working out of my home, as you know, as we all are. And I'm looking at my. I got 3 Last Action Heroes on card right now that I'm looking at.
Well, even think about like the Dick Tracy blank figure that they didn't put out originally because it was a spoiler.
Yeah.
And then like maybe kind of never did.
Like the Wonder Bread He-Man.
So speaking of He-Man and some of these more prominent toy lines that we've talked about, the toys that made us, right? So you guys really nailed the nostalgia factor with that show. Even for the lines that a lot of people know and love, there was still so much new to be learned to be learned from the seasons of that. How do you go about selecting the lines that you want to feature on that show?
Well, first of all, Netflix very nicely just let me pick. So let's start with that. No other network I've worked with in my life would have done that. And then the rule that I used, which I broke with Star Trek, I want to be honest about that. But I basically had a bunch of rules. And rules, by the way, is in quotes. There had to be a character that, like, if there was a Mount Rushmore of toys, at least one of the characters could have been on the Mount Rushmore. And my example would be like, my wife doesn't give a shit about Transformers, but she can recognize Optimus Prime and Bumblebee on sight. So it had to work with something like that. Then there had to be a good story. So like there's some toys that are massive successes, but they don't really have a good story. So that was also a variable. And then the other thing that I really tried to do was I wanted all the toys that we did to be multi-generational, because I really looked at it as constituents. So like, I'll give you an example of what we didn't do. Like a lot of people are like, you got to do Mask. You got to do Mask. And I'm like, Mask was up for 3 years. Arguably, the 3rd year was a complete disaster to the point where season 3 of Mask had very little to do with seasons 1 and 2. It was like a very peculiar like reboot within the first generation. But even without that, it was a 3-year toy line. So you're not going to get generations of fans. Whereas with Star Wars or Barbie or Hello Kitty or even G.I. Joe, you're going to have at least 2 or 3 or even barely 4 generations of Netflix subscribers that are interested. So, and by the way, one of the rules that I broke, one of the lines that I broke the rule on, believe it or not, was He-Man. Because He-Man really was a 1-generation toy. And as popular as that episode is to some degree, it's, Hello Kitty, believe it or not, if I had to guess, and I don't know the numbers, they don't tell us, I guarantee you Hello Kitty performed better than He-Man.
Hello Kitty was definitely the most shocking episode for me. Like in terms of like not knowing a thing about the toy line, but recognizing the iconography from that brand. The ins and outs of that toy line were absolutely insane.
We could make a 2-hour documentary about the making of that episode. I mean, I had a rule with making the show that it was going to be a positive show. I worked really hard to avoid dark, negative stuff because at the end of the day, it was a show about toys. We were interviewing Hasbro employees that had been fired 30 years earlier after Hasbro bought Kenner. And they were crying and angry. And any other show I've ever produced, that would have been at the front of the episode and in the trailer. But I just didn't include stuff like that. And to that point, with the Hello Kitty, I mean, it was bonkers. I mean, the company was bonkers. Everything about it was bonkers. But I just didn't include it in the episode because that's just not the show I was making. But yeah, we could have made a very different episode. And out of respect to Sanrio, and how open they were to us, and I would argue in some ways too open. We did not show some of the warts that we saw.
So what would you say would be the most challenging? Would that be the most challenging thing that you came across in putting together the stories and the series? Or was there something else?
No, I mean, Hello Kitty was the hardest episode to make. Second hardest to make was Lego. Because, first of all, there were a lot of documentaries about Lego, so we had to work really hard to find something original about it. But the other problem with Lego is they really don't have characters the way the other lines do. So it's very easy to push emotional buttons, with showing Luke and Leia, He-Man and Skeletor, Cobra Commander and Destro, whatever. But you really didn't have that with Lego. So we had to work really, really hard to find an original way into the story. And to be completely honest, I think we came close. That's one of the episodes I wish I could get a do-over.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, because see, like that was one where I mean, granted, to your point, there's a lot of information out there about Lego, but like I just feel like I feel like you guys did tackle that at a much different angle than anything else I had previously seen about it. Like I feel like it was more. I mean, I don't want to say gritty because the show's not really. To your point, it's meant to be a positive show, but I feel like it touched on things that I had not seen in other documentaries.
Yeah, I feel like I learned a lot from it too.
I appreciate you saying it. I'm probably being too hard on myself, and whatever. That's what as an artist, that's how you're supposed to be. You always think you can do better. One of the openings for the episodes drives me crazy. We didn't do something else. So, listen, I'm sure it's fine. I've heard no criticism of the episode, literally none. But I know a way to do it now that I'll give you an example. The Transformers episode, that whole thing with the tin cans, with the opening and how it all came back to tin cans, that was literally like we had a completely different episode that was very, in my opinion, boring, and we just hadn't cracked it. And then I just was going through transcripts trying to find a different way to tell the story when I saw the word tuna fish can or tin can had appeared 3 times. And I was like, why does tin can appear 3 times? And that helped us crack the episode. And I think we made a very original Transformers documentary because we figured that out. And then also the stuff with Cullen and his brother. But I just feel with Lego, if I could do it all over again, I really, more than we did, we only touched upon it, but more than we did, I would have. The company was traumatized from almost going out of business in '03. I mean, traumatized. Every interview we did in Billund, like literally, I'll never forget. We were interviewed. She's in the episode. We interview her primarily about Lego Friends. But I remember talking to her, and she was probably 28, 29 years old when we interviewed her. And she was traumatized by the 2003 almost bankruptcy. And she was probably in junior high school when that happened. So the fact that there was an employee who didn't work at Lego in '03 that was traumatized by it, that was really interesting. And I think it's a real testament to Lego and how respectful they are of the delicateness of staying in business and success, that a brand new employee 20 years later, or 15 years later, whatever, was literally talking about the bankruptcy as though she had worked at the company when she had. I've never seen that before. And I've interviewed people who have worked at dozens of companies.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely, we've had the opportunity to talk to both Amy Corbett and Jamie Berard from the Lego Masters show on Fox. They were the two judges.
Yeah.
And it's very obvious, speaking to both of them, that there is this very like close-knit family vibe for what's going on, in Denmark at that company.
Yeah.
So, part of me is like, wow, that's really, that is shocking. But on the other hand, it's like, you know what? It kind of makes sense, because I bet they ingrain that kind of like shared feeling culture, throughout all of their employees.
Yeah. I mean, every single room, except for bathrooms, conference rooms, offices, every single room in Billund, and this is probably true for other Lego offices too, has a container in it filled with red Lego bricks. And basically what they're doing is they're making sure nobody forgets. No matter what you do here, no matter how highfalutin you might run the Star Wars account, you might run Ninjago, it's all about the bricks. Don't ever forget, it's all about the bricks.
I'm sure you've gotten this question 1.5 million times, but we can't have you on a toy podcast and not talk about season 4 of every toy collector's favorite series.
If there is a season 4, and it has not been greenlit yet, but if there is a season 4, I know what toys we're doing. I can't say what they are, but 2 of them are super obvious. One of them is medium obvious, and one of them, if Netflix lets me do it, will be a personal bookend for myself. Based, and I've said it in other interviews, so I can tell you what it is. It literally would be an episode called, and it would be the last episode of the show, "The Toys That Should Have Not Been Made." And it'll focus on LJN's Dune line, and it'll be I think the perfect bookend to Star Wars, because it'll really show how delicate success is. Like how everything went perfect with Star Wars and Kenner, everything went wrong and sideways with Dune and LJN. And there's a lot of toys like that. I mean, there's a lot of companies. I forget the name of the company, but Trendmasters, I think, did the Independence Day line. Is that right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
I think that's right, yeah.
And largely went out of business because of Independence Day. And that's a really weird example, because the movie succeeded. And if you remember the toys they made, they were fantastic. They had motion sensors in them. This was in like 1996. I mean, they were extremely complicated toys. But
they came with floppy disks with games on them.
I'm looking at one right now. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember those.
Yeah, and it was a disaster, absolute disaster. So you can, what's it called? Monday morning quarterback it. But yeah, so that's really how I want to end the show, because to me, the toys are obviously very important to me and very personal to me, but to me, the show is really about the delicateness of success. And I think by showing an entire episode of, even though this sounds depressing, we would find a fun way to do it, the failures, I think it'll really support the rest of the show.
I could sit here all day and take guesses at what the obvious toys would be, but like, it's just there. I know that there are, I'm sure you get requests, like you mentioned Mask,
Yeah.
but like I'm sure the Toy Biz, Marvel line, and the Kenner Batman figures, like I'm sure you get requests out the wazoo for lines like that. But I really hope you get to do this season 4.
I've made a lot of TV shows that nobody cares about. So the fact that every day people are, reaching out, wanting to talk to me about this stuff, I haven't taken it for granted for even a billionth of a second.
Well, speaking of TV shows that we want to talk about, we started talking about it at the top of the show, but tell us a little bit more about how a toy store near you came into be.
Well, you may have heard of this thing called COVID. Basically, there are these 2 vintage toy stores near my office. One is called Black Cat Collectibles. The other is called Blast from the Past. So I was talking to the owners of those stores. I go into them usually 3 or 4 times a month. And they were talking about how the quarantine was going to, crush them. So I had that on my mind. And then my wife, like that night or the next night, whatever, was watching a show about a chef. And it was on YouTube. She was watching it on our TV, but it was YouTube. And it was literally about a chef cooking noodles. And I suddenly was like, why don't we do that for the toy stores? We could get exposure for the toy stores, so maybe their online sales will go up. And every time people watch the episode, we'll make money, and we could send most of the money to them. So I called Billy Galaxy, who owns one of my favorite toy stores in the whole world, Billy Galaxy Toys in Portland, Oregon. And I said to him, I go, dude, if you filmed it, do you think if I told you what to shoot, you could film it? And like we could make an episode? And he was like, yeah. So we put out a press release and we got about 50 stores all over the world, 2 from Japan, 1 from Taiwan, England, Argentina, Netherlands, you name it. And basically they're all shooting their own footage where we give them a list of things we need them to shoot. And then we edit them in our own company, and we, color correct, audio correct, everything. We created an opening sequence, yada, yada, yada. And the first episode, which is Billy Galaxy, comes out May 29th.
Yeah, that was going to be something I was going to ask is how do you kind of tackle that and have it turn around, especially now?
Because I'm a paranoid mofo, I started evacuating my company February 29th. So by the time we got quarantined, I had already had my entire staff move into their homes and also shipped all the equipment to their homes. So we've been fully functional since the California quarantine started, which was one of the earliest in the country. So basically, the toy stores drop box us the footage. We edit them into a cut. I give notes with the editor, who's a full-time employee. And then we see what we don't have. And then we ask the toy store to shoot more. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. And then we lock the episode, and then we deliver.
And they're just doing this on their iPhones, or are you also shipping equipment?
Nope. I'd say at least at minimum 95% of it is on iPhones. And I mean, the trailer went out today, so I don't know if you've seen the trailer or not. But
yes, we did.
That looked to you like it was shot on iPhones?
Not at all.
Yeah. And again, that's not me taking props for myself and my company. I'm giving props to the Apple Corporation.
Yeah, it's why, like, so we set up this call. So we're recording today is May 7th. We set up this call about a week ago, and since then a lot of more information has come out about the show, and the trailer happened to drop today, which was a nice little serendipitous moment, because now we get to talk about it. But yeah, I was shocked, which is why as soon as we both saw the trailer, I was texting with Dave, and I was saying, like, how the fuck did they shoot this? I bet they're sending a camera around in a shipping box.
That's literally done with people's phones. And then, we have our color correcting systems that we use for Netflix and Disney Plus. So, I mean, it is going through our very powerful machines and our very talented colorists and audio people. But that being said, none of those machines work if the data is not strong enough from the camera. And yeah, the iPhones are strong enough. The 10 and aboves.
So how many episodes again are you planning for this series?
We have deals with 50 stores. We have footage from 37. I hope, because like I said, we give notes and then we need more footage. That has proven to be a little tricky. So my hope is we get to make at least 30. And the reason we wouldn't do 50 is just because, and I completely understand this, so I'm not chastising a business owner, but, as COVID hopefully starts to go away and the toy stores open again, they're not going to have as much time to shoot stuff for us. So
yeah,
if 50 stores get us what we need, there will be 50 episodes. A term that is normally used in a negative sense, I have always found you can find positive applications for it if you embrace it. And I am definitely embracing a quote unquote loosey-goosey methodology. So this is a labor of love for everybody. And it'll be what it'll be. There could be 20 episodes. There could be 52 episodes. It's whatever the stores want to do. We're happy to support.
I know the toy community is really excited about this. The buzz already around the trailer, and when the show was announced, because a lot of us, and yourself included, we all have our favorite local shops, and the last thing that we want, to happen is for them to go away because of all of this.
And we're always looking for a new place to go too. So
yeah, exactly. And because of my stand-up comedy business, I travel a lot. So I have favorite stores in almost every city. Like when I go to Chicago, it's Sophie's choice. Like I usually only have time to go to 2 stores. Minneapolis is just as bad. Like there's 4 stores in Minneapolis that I love. So I am dialed in. And then every now and then I get to go to a new city. Because I usually go to the same 20, 30 cities over and over. By the way, Seattle, oh my God, like 300 toy stores there. So yeah, so I'm, whenever I go to a new city, I love finding the vintage toy store. Also the pawn shops, by the way. Pawn shops don't get enough credit. You can get some great stuff at pawn shops. But yeah, it's my favorite thing in the world to do. Because when you're shooting stand-up specials, I usually don't have to be on set till 4 or 5 o'clock. So, and then we don't start shooting till 7 p.m. So, yeah, going to these toy stores during the day in the era of Uber is the greatest thing in the world.
Well, once we're allowed to travel again safely, we'll definitely be hitting you up when we when we're going around. And we're like, hey, Brian, we're here.
What's good? Yeah.
What's good in this state?
Please do.
Definitely. And before we let you go and let you get back to producing more incredible content and all types of varieties, is there anything other than the new show that you want to plug? Is there any cool stand-up stuff that you have that you're working on? Anything that you want our listeners to know about?
It's funny. These questions, I'm always hamstrung answering them because I can only talk about what's been made public. So, there's so much stuff I want to tell you. I can't tell you. But what I can tell you is we have, in my very unhumble and biased opinion, we have a wonderful show coming out in the fourth quarter on Disney Plus called Behind the Attraction. which is all about we're partnered up with Dwayne Johnson and his company, $7. And that's all about individual attractions, also known as rides, and parks. So that's coming out hopefully in November, December. And then we have another show coming out that has been announced, but it hasn't gotten too much press yet on BET Plus. That's coming out next month, called All the Way Black. And that show is a very, very deep, nostalgic dive into African American pop culture. So we do a show for the CW called Discontinued. It's not like the African American version of Discontinued, to be sure, but it's a very similar deep dive into a very specific part of American culture. And in this case, African American culture.
Awesome. Yeah, I can't wait for all of that. Literally my ears perked up when you said that you were making a show about attractions with The Rock.
Yeah.
Because that's the other thing that Dave and I are very passionate about is Disney World and Disneyland. So
you will be blown away. The access. I hope they don't mind me saying this. I mean, we would be seeing things and doing things where I'm like, if they knew we'd be doing this, I don't think they would have greenlit the show. Like,
awesome.
This thing called Third Shift Tour. It started at 9 p.m. and went till 6 a.m. I mean, at Anaheim, I mean, what we saw, this is the one thing I'll say, and again, I hope Disney doesn't get mad at me for saying this. Anybody who saw, you know how everybody gets mad at Disney for their ticket prices being so high?
Yeah.
If people saw what I saw, they would be shocked they actually can make a profit.
Yeah, you saw a lot of what they would refer to on the internet as not safe for magic and NSFM.
Well, it's funny, and I know you're joking, but I will say this: what they do, what the Imagineers do, is so mind blowing that in a weird way, like, first of all, unless you're 5 years old, inherently you know there's no magic. So
correct,
but arguably, when you see what they've done to make it appear to be magic, at least in my opinion, it's more impressive and more magical. Because like there's an attraction I was behind the scenes on. I can't tell you what it was, but seeing how it worked and knowing that there was a staff meeting at some point where somebody said, hey, if we do X, Y, and Z, we could make this happen. The fact that this employee was not laughed out of the room or fired, but this corporation went on to spend billions of dollars to do what I think in any other company would have been like, is this guy drunk? Like, it was like just crazy. I mean, like I said, there was this one thing I saw, and I saw many things like this, but this one thing in particular, I just remember like it was time to go on to the next thing. And I just stood there looking at this, being like, this is 1 billion pounds of concrete. This is not one, not two. This is dozens of like the most powerful computers on earth, like put together in a room. Like, yeah. I mean, it was just stuff like that where it really felt magical. In a weird way.
Well, we're gonna have once this show comes out, we're just gonna have you come back on so that way we can give more context to the stuff that you're hinting at.
that would be my pleasure.
Awesome.
We'll reconvene.
Yeah, we'll reconvene and we'll do a special episode once the show's out on Disney Plus, and we'll have you back on so that way we can revisit all this cool shit.
For sure.
Oh, I wish you had cursed sooner. I didn't know I could curse. I've been holding it on to curse.
Oh, no. Sorry. I usually give that green light at the beginning. Yeah, no. I mean, if you want to get a couple out. Just so that you feel
it just cracks me up. Whenever I curse, the podcasts are like, whoa, hey, please, this is a family show. And then when I do curse, it's like, oh, fuck, I could have cursed.
It's a family show in the sense that my brother and I host it.
There you go. The best kind of family.
Yeah, our upfront is actually the first thing that you hear is us asking each other if we curse on the episode, and we say
all right,
yes.
next time.
Will do. All right, Brian, thank you so much for being here with us. This was a great chat.
Thank you. My pleasure. A lot of fun. And yeah, keep doing what you guys are doing. I appreciate it very, very much.
Thank you, dear listener, for hanging out with us today. Subscribe, rate, and review us wherever you listen, and then tell your friends to do it. Thanks also to Joe Azari, the golden voice behind our intro. Our music is Game Boy Horror by the Zombie Dandies. Find more about them both in our show notes.
Follow us on social media at AIC_podcast on Instagram and Twitter. Stop by and say hi, show us your toy hauls, and share your toy stories. Maybe we'll talk about it in a future episode.
Don't try this at home. Void where prohibited and some assembly required. Each sold separately, not a flying toy. Consult a physician if your toy run exceeds more than 4 hours.
This has been a non-productive media presentation. Executive producer Frank Hablawi. This program and many others like it on the Non-Productive Network is distributed under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives license. Please share it, but ask before trying to change it or sell it. For more information, visit non-productive.com.